welcome to Arts Express. This is Prairie Miller, and on the show, in our News from Strange Places episode this week, the Big George from cyberspace with his own unique wrap-up report of Biden convening that NATO summit just taking place in D.C.
Joe, man, I can't keep doing this every single day. I can't keep cooking you. I'm not Gordon Ramsay. You're at the NATO summit. Democrats are calling for your head. This is your one chance to prove to everyone that you are still competent, that your brain doesn't have more holes in it than a tennis racket. And you're doing this? Joe, you're doing this? Come on, Joe. I'm rooting for you, bro. This is so sad. I mean, this is our head of state, and he's at the NATO summit, and what he's about to say shouldn't be shocking to anyone that's been paying attention, but let's play it.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
I can't do this anymore. This is so bad. Because he's going to run up to the mic again and be like, nah, that's not what I meant.
President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
He said, I'm better. Mr. President, send money to the Ukraine. We need the money. Send the money. Let me buy new mansion in Miami.
I'm better.
I'm better. Yes, send money to the Ukraine. We need to fight Putin. Join NATO. The Ukraine. Front lines. Yeah, I am not a fan of Zelensky, as you can tell by my words for him. Joe Biden is a sad disaster. And this was not the only moment. Because Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, I'm not a fan of hers because she's a crook. She abandoned the movement she fought so desperately for, right? She just kind of became a globalist too, so that's annoying. But she was mocking Joe Biden at the summit. Like mocking him, making faces to mock him. This clip was even worse, man. This was, I think, a few months ago. But that's Meloni right there. She sees Joe wandering off like a lost sheep, so she rushes in to save him. Emmanuel Macron is just sitting there, standing there, knowing they're screwing America. I see Rishi Sunak, so that means it was back then. So Meloni has been saving this guy. Look how she just grabbed him. Hey, look, we got to invade Italy for just the disrespect. I know we have our puppet and he's horrible and everything, but he's our puppet, man. Oh, what am I doing? He's our puppet, man. You guys can't keep doing this stuff and getting away with it. Yeah, this is a moment that will go down in American history. I mean, calling Zelensky Putin. This is why I say Joe Biden still understands certain things about politics. He still has enough awareness. His brain is obviously going. If he has dementia, it's early stage. And that explains why he's fighting the Democrat establishment to stay in the White House. This guy just called the president of Ukraine Putin, but he recognized that he did that and stopped himself and said, oh, no, President Zelensky. So he's not completely gone. He still knows his way around D.C. He still understands who he is. I mean, his entire life, he built a career off of lying and, cheating. And now he's in a position of power. Do you think he's going to let that go? Especially when you have a wife like Jill Biden who loves the GQ covers. She loves the attention. Her entire life she had been a nobody, just somebody Joe Biden knocked up, and now she's the first lady of the United States getting on magazine covers. So the family loves the attention they're getting. I don't really feel bad anymore. I think Joe has enough awareness to know he's gone. The fact that he knew what he said was wrong tells us everything. Thank you all very much for watching. Goodbye.
And now, with the country in ongoing turmoil, especially most recently with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump by yet another young man reported to have been relentlessly bullied in school, bullying seemingly the accepted U.S. cultural norm, and the government, as usual, rushing to declare that violence has no place in this country, but that lethal homegrown combination of aggression and alienation and the unspoken truth that gun control begins at the Pentagon, sustaining the U.S. as a belligerent power around the world. So in that context, here's Shahid Bolson, commentator, Muslim scholar, and political analyst, probing an essential question, tying it all together, the American condition, and how being American is a condition, not just a nationality.
Being American isn't a citizenship, it's a condition. And once you realize that you have that condition, you can spend the rest of your life trying to recover from it. It's like PTSD. You have American dissonance syndrome. And if you reach adulthood and you're still patriotic, you have the most profound case of Stockholm syndrome imaginable, because that society has deeply, deeply wronged you. I mean, when you say that someone is an American, basically you're saying that they were an abused child, psychologically abused, emotionally abused, mentally abused, educationally abused, and abused in every other kind of way. You've been lied to. You've been programmed with dysfunction. Your intellect has been systematically degraded. Your intellectual and your moral depth has been deliberately depleted to make you shallow. Cognitive dissonance has been inflicted on you your whole life. When you say American, you may just as well say damaged or victimized. You come from a country that has a fabricated national identity around a set of values and principles it never, ever applied anywhere. And in fact, more often than not, only ever applied the opposite. You live in a country that is demonstrably and obviously an authoritarian oligarchy, but which you have been taught since childhood is a democracy. No one living in America today has lived under any administration that wasn't guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity, committed both abroad and on domestic soil. And you've been brainwashed into thinking that your country stands for freedom and justice. Well, it's sick. Your education system is based on the Prussian system of indoctrination to turn every student into an obedient conformist slave to power. But you pretend that your society cherishes individuality. They've done nothing but damage you. Your schools have damaged you. Your media has damaged you. Your entertainment, your fake history, your myths, your government have done nothing but damage you all your life. That's what it means to be an American. And part of that damage, one aspect of that relentless damage, is in the question itself. You're a white American, you said. That matters to you. And you force it to matter to everyone in that country, even though it's an actually completely irrelevant characteristic. But because of the way that you have developed as a so-called society, you made it relevant. And you made it an issue. And you insist on keeping it an issue. So you can never escape. I don't even get to make it irrelevant to me because of the racial history in America. The whole context of race in the United States is a self-perpetuating death spiral that never dies. You assign value to all of these characteristics that are actually the least valuable characteristics that a human being can have. I mean, why race? Why skin color and not eye color or hair color? Why not height? It's incredibly arbitrary and stupid. But you did what you did. You drew the lines where you drew the lines, and you sentenced whole segments of humanity to imprisonment within these shallow, superficial, meaningless definitions which then created a long, disgraceful history of actual experience that millions upon millions of people have suffered for no reason. So everyone who grew up in America eventually has to pursue self-rehabilitation, deprogramming, repair, debugging, detoxification, just to try to undo all the damage that being American has done to them, just so they can try to be normal. To be American is to suffer from a multitude of chronic diseases. It's a condition, not a nationality. It's a condition that every serious and sincere person has to try to cure themselves of over the course of their adulthood. But for most of them, it's a terminal condition. They'll never get over it. They'll die that way. And the sickest part of it is that this condition, you're actually pressured to preserve it, to uphold it, to cherish it, rather than to abolish it. Just like your question, as if I'm doing something wrong by not basing my identity and my worldview and my understanding on the dysfunctional, reductionist definition of white American. I mean, look, for most of the people who are categorized as Americans and who claim American history as their history, who feel some sort of, connection to the so-called founding fathers, Paul Revere and what have you, most of them only have even been over there for 2 or 3 generations. A smaller number than that's been over there for 4 generations, and very few, except for the descendants of slaves, have been over there since the beginning. The overwhelming majority of so-called Americans throughout most of American history, their families were somewhere else. It's the same with mine. The Irish side of my family came over during the potato famine, and the German side came over more recently than that. Yet, for some reason, we're all supposed to believe that we are all somehow connected to the history and the cultural heritage of that country, connected to people that we're not connected to in any way whatsoever, as if they are our ancestors. They even call them our forefathers. What do I have to do with George Washington? America isn't a tribe. America is nothing but a blood-soaked piece of land that a ragtag horde of Europeans fled to escape Europe. And then it became a land that people fled to escape American foreign policy that pillaged their own countries. And the people that have undeniably been so-called American longer than 99% of so-called Americans, the descendants of African slaves, are still treated like outsiders in a country that they've been in longer than most people. They've been there at least as long as the most pedigreed aristocratic so-called Mayflower families. I mean, just on seniority alone, they're supposed to be among the highest status citizens of that country. Their ancestors sacrificed more by force and for more generations than anyone living in America today. But until now, they have to fight just to be given equal rights and equal opportunities on par with people who just got off the boat 3 generations ago, 2 generations ago, 1 generation ago, or yesterday. Now, let's not even talk about the indigenous people, because of course let's not talk about them. They're never to be spoken of. But somehow we're all Americans. This abstract, fabricated identity that everyone is just supposed to believe in and unthinkingly adopt. Because if you didn't, you might actually notice how abstract and how fabricated it is. When it comes to some sort of national identity, country-based, geographically based identity, politically based identity, everyone accepts the idea that you can become integrated into a history that isn't yours. That, for instance, your family can immigrate to the U.S. in the 20th century or the 19th century or the 21st century and get citizenship, and then suddenly you have Abraham Lincoln in your family tree. Everyone accepts that as rational. But when it comes to Islam, for some reason you can't accept it. You can't accept that becoming Muslim connects you to the continuum of Muslim lives, stretching back all the way through the followers of all the prophets. You can't accept that becoming a Muslim makes you a member of a nation based on belief, even though belief in so-called American values and the American Constitution is supposedly what makes you, or what makes an immigrant an American. An Italian American, a Greek American, a Haitian American, everyone. Everyone recognizes and everyone accepts that those people, immigrants, feel a connection to and still derive their identity from their home country. But being a Muslim American isn't supposed to be like that. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Roosevelt, Kennedy, all of these men who never believed in or practiced the values that you're supposed to revere them for, are supposed to mean more to you than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, more than the Sahaba, more than all of the Muslims throughout history all over the world who believed in and practiced and lived by the values that you as a Muslim also believe in, practice, and live by. No, sorry. I do not identify with the hypocrites of so-called American history who only ever use their preaching of values and principles as a way to mislead and misdirect the population and to distract them from the misery caused by the actual values that they practiced. The values of greed and selfishness and white supremacy and classism and materialism, exploitation, theft, murder, and plunder. I was raised in the country where those values were practiced but not preached, and where the values that were preached were not practiced. Just having been born there and just having been raised there does not oblige me to pretend otherwise. No, the history of Islam, the history of the Muslims, that's my history. And that includes Muslims from all parts of the world, Muslims of every race and color, ethnicity, and language. Those are my predecessors. Those are my ancestors. The Ummah is my nation and my national identity. And their history is my history. Being American is nothing but a legal status and an incidental fact of where my parents were when my mother gave birth to me. The rest of it is just damage and programming that I've had to overcome over the course of my life, and superficial characteristics like my language and, certain cultural practices like the food and the manner of clothes that I'm used to, what I'm familiar with. But it's like what I've talked about before. Being a Westerner, being an American refers more to a mentality than a nationality. And separating that mentality from that nationality is the most crucial thing that any American can ever do for their own mental, spiritual, psychological, and emotional well-being. And I think that any American who does that, who genuinely does that, sincerely does that, well, I think that they will inevitably find that they feel that they have more in common with the people of the Global South than with mainstream America, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim. I personally believe that nothing can actually help you do that, deprogram yourself better than Islam. But even for those who don't embrace Islam, who just try to come to terms with the fallacy of Americanness and Americanism, well, I think that they'll realize how duped and how propagandized and how abused they've been their whole lives, and how the system over there is parasitically sucking every drop of blood, sweat, and tears out of their beings, and how all of their sacrifices and all of their hard work are being paid back in IOUs and counterfeit bills. I think they'll realize how they're being conned from the cradle to the grave, all for the enrichment and all for the benefit of people who don't and never did believe in the myths that they tell you about America, that they want you to believe. And I think that they'll start to identify with the oppressed and with the victimized all around the world. Just like how the super rich are a nation unto themselves, America's victims globally should be a nation unto themselves too. America's victims, foreign and domestic. And they should feel and they should build solidarity with one another, because we all have more in common with each other than we have with that predator nation that's been preying on all of us.
And coming up next on Arts Express, stand-up comedian, actor, and musician Tommy Davidson joins us on the show to talk about his national comedy tour with Katt Williams and his music as well, with his new single, You Show Me, and how it all began for him on In Living Color and Spike Lee's Bamboozled and other productions, along with figuring out being funny in this troubled world. First, his performance at the Laugh Society with Elton John Doesn't Understand the Blues, then Tommy Davidson.
But all singers, when you think about songwriters, Elton John, that's a bad songwriter. Sing the blues, he messed up on that one. I guess that's why they call it the blues. Time on my hands, coming time spent with you, laughing like children. living like lovers, rolling like thunder. Another cover on your wall, and I gave them what they call it lovely. Nothing that you. Will someone please tell Elton this is not the blues? What he just described was an orgy at Disneyland. The blues would be different. My mother's a liar. My house caught on fire. Someone slashed my tires, and I just got fired. That's the blues. You gotta love it. Ain't no doubt about it. And all these artists, just legends involved with it, man. Don't make a difference. Al Green? Woo! Al Green. Al got a style, too. It's just a style. Say, but let the same scenes. Come on, join me. Since we've been together, I'm loving you forever. We'll sing one for y'all later. What Era, come on. Let me be the one you come running to. Baby. And I won't have spend you too much with you. I ain't gonna knock you out. Said I won't not see no. Woo! Said I wanna see together. Loving you and I. To her hand. Damn. Y'all need to get together more often. Y'all need to go down to City Hall. Let's stay together. Gonna stop this unemployment. These crack wars. Gonna change what's bad to good, like the black community should. Come on, y'all. Thank you, Philly. You met me.
How are you, Chloe?
Hello and welcome to our show.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I got some stuff to show you.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, this is radio, so I can't see anything, but go ahead. All right. That was
All right,
that was
you got me
one
this
of your
morning.
jokes. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you
But
got me this morning.
you
I know.
got me. Okay, what can you say about your new single, You Show Me, dedicated to your youngest daughter?
I can say it's Born of Beauty. Both figuratively, and philosophically, The music is coming from a really beautiful and natural place. It's coming from AM radio, as a kid, and being able to hear all these different types of music and share an audience that is multi-race and multicultural. And this is the result of a life lived as a child of hippies,
Mm. And what will you be up to on your current national tour with Katt Williams?
Well, I'm out there on the road with him. He's taking on brand new popularity. After breaking the internet with the Shannon Sharp show, and so that's a very good tour for me because I'm home from Sunday through Thursday, which is big because I got teenagers as well. So I got young adults, teenagers, and I got my toddler, and I couldn't be happier. So You Show Me is a culmination of having her around and me being around more for her, and realizing that the other kids had another phase, but now I'm getting closer to them too because of that awareness. And this song, I meant to do this. I meant for it to come out in spring. I meant for it to have a subtle flamenco sound. I meant for it to be melodic. I meant for it to be beautiful because that's exactly right now what we need.
Hmm. And I wanted to ask you, what are your memories of In Living Color and how that show shook up social and cultural dynamics of television back then?
We, I think we got lucky. Not lucky. I think we got fortunate to be a part of Keenan Ivory Wayans' vision, and I owe my career to him. We all do. He pushed us to the limit. Keenan never backed off of what he knew our potential was, and I got this morning. I just feel like I owe him that. And great person. Really, really helped me personally. Didn't judge me, and that's where it all came from, and it goes from there.
Hmm.
And just it was like being in a circus. It was like nonstop costume changes, having fun, laughing our butts off.
Mhm.
Take the class clowns, put them in one class. you know.
Mhm.
So we were just unstoppable, and we still are.
And how would you say being raised in a white family influenced your approach to comedy and your perspective of the world around you?
But I would say this that I was a colorful child, but I was colorless
Mm.
as far as race goes. So I loved everything, and of course, like I do. A child comes in here just loving animals, and I was raised in the atmosphere in the Midwest. There's a lot of beauty, a lot of meadows and lakes, and that's where I played and farms and moved to an urban setting in D.C. You know, got beat up by black people during the riot,
Mm.
and not knowing that they were called black, and not knowing that my family was called white. I thought that they were brown, and I thought that my family was like beige because I got my colors out of the crayons. So I thought we were like animals. If a cat has kittens, it could be a brown cat
Mm.
and have two white ones, a black one, a gray one, and maybe two white ones, you know. And a colt, a horse can be a purely white horse and have a speckled brown horse, a colt.
Yeah.
So I thought that's what we were.
Mm.
And that's it. And it's just hard when I found out that that was different. And I just was in disbelief that I have to choose sides. But knowing, not really. The thing that blew me away was that how much I love my family and how insignificant color meant. Because the cats that had kittens and the dogs that had puppies, they loved each and every one of them,
Yeah.
no matter what color they were. If you took a puppy too far from the box or wherever they were, the mom would be concerned. She'd have seven other puppies. So it didn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And regarding your comedy, how do you find being funny and a balance between your humor and the troubled, sobering world we live in now?
Soldiering forward on how my comedy has always been. I've never been the shock comedy.
Mm.
I've always been looking for that ray of sunshine in everybody, like what's given to me. In all of the entertainment that was brought my way as a kid. From Chitty Bang Bang to the play Hair, to Tommy, to play Tommy, Jesus Christ Superstar, the Brady Bunch, Dick Wilson Show, Carol Burnett, Laugh-In, Don Koishner's Rock Concert, just all of the things, Seals and Yarnell, Sonny and Cher,
Mm.
just on and on and on. And they worked really, really hard at making sure that America as an audience laughed together. And it finally culminated when the living color took off in the 90s. And America finally felt comfortable laughing with black people and vice versa.
Yeah.
It's like the color line in humor was just broken in half. And it's remained that way. If you look at the way hip hop has affected us and music has gone into all these different areas, and even advertising. You know, I would say that 30% of the advertising shows mixed couples. It says something about the demographics in this country. So although there's this pseudo race problem, which I address it as that, although it exists. I mean, it's an ism, right? So there's racism and there's sexism, and there are isms and they're not wasms. They just are. But within isms is an existence together. I think the only race that we really raced to was to not be speaking Japanese and German.
And have you found
There, I said it.
And have you found with the current censorship going on in the comedy world, have you had to deal with it at all?
I haven't. Unfortunate part is even though it's a censorship situation, it also spills over into a mob mentality, which is never good. So if the group that is oppressed, you know, rises up to have their rights, and then they turn into, you know, the oppressor. It's not the balance. It's join up. You know, like my mother used to always say, the people united will never be defeated. The only race problem I see in this country is how green can divide us.
And when Tommy Davidson looks in the mirror, what does he see?
Robert Davidson's son, Robert Davidson's youngest son. She never addressed me as her adopted child, but addressed me as her son. And I see a little boy who was happy just being happy and content with all of the things that was around him. You know, friends and even adults that treated him, you know, with a lot of beauty and grace. Yeah. And that was, you know, like anything. You know, we're all corrupted by growing up. You know, and accepting that person can go into a school with a military a weapon, open fire on children, and not even the top government can regulate gun makers. But, you know, if we're existing with that, then anything goes.
Yeah.
But those are our children.
And any last word about You Show Me and what you'd like to convey to audiences with your new song?
With You Show Me, I'm trying to. Not trying to. I'm giving the listener an opportunity to think and feel happy and joy about the present. And that's a simple point. Because now I feel like we really need it.
Yeah.
On the cusp of political crisis and wars around the world. And you might think that this is not a beautiful place. You know, but you might want to ask a dolphin. You know, or a tiger if you would leave it alone.
Yeah.
You know, this is a place where where we are.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Tommy Davidson, for calling into our show, for joining us on the show. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
This is Jim Messina, and I wanted to let you know that I'm going to give a shout out here for Arts Express.
There's battle lines being drawn, and nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds are getting so much resistance from behind. Every time we stop, hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
And now on Arts Express.
My esteemed listeners, tonight we have a conversation that is both timely and crucial given the ongoing turmoil in the Middle East. Our guest, Richard Kuper, is no stranger to the complexities of this conflict. As a founding member and longtime chair of Jews for Justice for Palestinians, the web editor for Jewish Voice for Labour, a university lecturer, published writer, and the founder of Pluto Press, Richard brings a wealth of knowledge and a unique perspective to this discussion. In a world where public perception often oversimplifies and misconstrues the intricacies of the Israel-Palestine conflict, it's vital to understand that not all Jewish or Israeli individuals support the policies of Netanyahu's government. Tonight we delve into this misconception and explore the diverse voices and opinions within the Jewish community. Richard Kuper, welcome to the show. Let's get right to it. Could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us about Jews for Justice for Palestinians? What inspired you to help found the group, and what are its main goals?
I was born in South Africa into a Jewish community. Roughly a third of the world that I knew, i.e. the white world, was Jewish in Johannesburg at my school, primary and secondary school. And I was very much part of that world. My grandfather was president of the Federation of Synagogues in South Africa, but my father was an atheist and I was brought up in a secular household, but observing Jewish traditions at my grandfather's, at Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach and all of that. I had an Orthodox bar mitzvah, but I never really believed, and my Jewishness was part of an ethnicity, if you like, rather than part of the Jewish religion. And in that I shared it with large numbers of people in South Africa, and when I came to England at the age of 20, I found much the same here. I moved in a world in which being Jewish was something you were, but not something you particularly talked about or noticed most of the time. When it did come to the fore, was obviously over the question of Israel. In South Africa, I was a Zionist. I went to Israel on a Zionist youth training program for a couple of months. I believed in Israel. It just felt a natural solution to the discomfort of apartheid, if you like, to think that there was somewhere else in the world where I would be welcome and would be living in an egalitarian society. My visit to Israel disabused me slightly. I still came away a Zionist, but felt uncomfortable. Too much of what I heard and saw in Israel was reminiscent of the way in which blacks were talked about in South Africa. There was a kind of cultural racism, an assumption of superiority, which I couldn't articulate at the time, but which left me with some discomfort. It came to a head in 1967 with the war, and I had to kind of try and make sense of it. And in doing so, I kind of felt that it was just obvious that Palestinians were having a pretty rough time of it, and that the similarities between the oppression they were suffering and the oppression I had grown up with in South Africa was now too much to ignore. We formed Jews for Justice for Palestinians in 2002. Originally, it was simply a statement of opposition to what Israel was doing, saying it's not in our name a mixture of secular and religious Jews, Zionist and non-Zionist Jews, just saying enough, end the occupation. In effect, this is not what Israel ought to be about. And we just felt we had to stand up and be counted. It was literally that. We had to say, Jews are a diverse range of communities. There is no single Jewish community. The Board of Deputies of British Jews does not speak for me, does not speak for us.
Turning now to the recent escalation of violence between Israel and Palestine, which many, including myself, do consider as genocide. Can you give us some historical context, Richard? For many in the West, this conflict only seemed to begin on October 7th. Why is it escalated so dramatically now?
Well, you're absolutely right. It didn't start on October the 7th. This is a conflict that's been going on for 100 years and more, ever since the development of the Zionist movement in the late 19th century and the decision that Israel should be a homeland for the Jews. In and of itself, I see nothing wrong with that. There is a deep Jewish tradition and connectedness to Israel, but none of that gives a mandate. God was not a property agent dealing out territory to various peoples around the world, and I think it's obscene the way in which people use biblical claims as a justification for their right to live in Palestine. The Zionist movement, when it went to Palestine, became fanatical in excluding Palestinian Arabs from its society, from working for its enterprises and so on, wanting a closed-off Jewish world. And not unnaturally, it excited hostility immediately from the people who lived in the territory. Zionism was a reaction to anti-Semitism, and in that sense, a movement for the liberation of Jews. But when it went to Palestine, it became something different. It became experienced by the people on the ground, the Palestinians, as imperialism and colonialism was experienced anywhere else in the world, as an oppressive outside factor coming in, taking away their land, which is particularly what caused immediate conflict in Palestine. They were being expropriated. Of course, they rebelled against it. After the Second World War, again, many Jews in displaced peoples camps throughout Europe had nowhere to go because no one wanted to take them in, and Israel became a refuge for them. So from that point of view, you can understand the connection to Israel or Palestine as a place of safety. Dire effect of that, however, on the people who were already there was to be played out, particularly in the war of 1947 to 48, where some 750,000 Palestinians were forced to flee or fled for safety, intending to come back, as people always flee from war zones. The Israeli state was declared in May 1948. Before that, almost half the Palestinians had fled in response to attacks on their villages. The massacre of Deir Yassin occurred before the declaration of the State of Independence and was a significant factor in forcing Palestinians to leave, persuading them to leave. Many of them left for other places within Palestine and found themselves within the new state of Israel and became Israeli citizens. But for the first 20 years of Israel's existence, they were under military rule. So Israel was never an egalitarian society.
There seems to be a common perception, and I've seen it at a couple of protests I've been at up here in the Northwest, mainly surprised that there has been a Jewish presence at some of the demonstrations. This perception seems to be that all Jewish people or Israeli people automatically support Netanyahu's policies. How accurate is this, and what should the public understand about the diversity of opinion within the Jewish communities?
People are surprised to see us. It's true, many of them probably haven't seen a Jewish person before, let alone a Jewish activist, taking the side of Palestinians. And we always say the Jewish community is not unified. This perception that there is one view and all Jews support the same view, it's a stereotype. It's the basis of anti-Semitism. Actually, stereotyping and homogenizing whole communities and whole populations. So we have always strived. From its inception, Jews for Justice for Palestinians found ourselves treated like pariahs by the official bodies of the Jewish community. We weren't allowed to attend events like Jewish Book Week if we were seen distributing leaflets of protest about Palestine outside. And so Jews for Justice for Palestinians rapidly became an organization pushing for pluralism within the Jewish community, the right to dissent internally. The organized bodies of the Jewish community speak mainly for those who are organized in synagogues and other organizations which affiliate, but they absolutely do not speak for all Jews.
On the topic of Israeli violence, seeming the only and almost inherent innate response and solution that they see, do you believe a peaceful or two-state solution is still possible, given such things as recent statements and actions from Israeli leaders like Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who referred to Palestinians as human animals and called for denying them basic necessities? Such comments and actions don't just go away overnight. Is peace, Richard, still a possibility after everything that has occurred since October 7th?
Will the world accept an ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from the territory between the river and the sea? I don't believe it, and I sincerely hope not. But that is what the diehards in the Israeli government are now driving for, or Palestinians who will live in not even Bantustans within the greater Israel that these Meshuggahs on the right wing in Israel envisage establishing. An ethno-nationalist state, destroy the Dome of the Rock, rebuild the Third Temple, introduce ritual slaughter back as we had it 2,005 years ago. It's back to the future with a vengeance. And I hope that the world will not accept it. In the end, Israel could not be doing what it is doing without America's support. Biden arms Israel. It's as simple as that. And the idea that opposing what Israel is doing in Gaza is anti-Semitic. I mean, there have been people who say calling for a ceasefire is anti-Semitic. And then by a tortured logic, it kind of assumes there'll be a ceasefire. Iran will arm Hamas. They'll use this opportunity, but then they'll attack Israel again. The way to stop any future attacks on Israel is to come up with some genuine solutions which offer Palestinians a way to Palestinian statehood, to recognition as a people, not as Untermenschen, subhumans, animals. I mean, the parallels with other societies which have eliminated people because they were not really people is absolutely terrifying. I mean, it's not just what's happening there. Western liberal values are at stake. Do we really believe in any of these talked about so avidly as the foundation of our civilization?
I've read in such things as the Haaretz newspaper and other liberal papers recently to try and get a more wider view of the situation, that there's a significant divide within Israel between the government and the general populace. How does this divide play out, especially with what I was reading about recent court ruling on drafting the ultra-Orthodox into the IDF?
It's been said for many decades that Israel as a society is deeply fragmented and on the verge of civil war, and the only thing that holds it together is the common enemy. It needs the Palestinians to stop its own society from falling apart. It needs Lebanon and Hezbollah. It needs Iran, because without them, the divides within Israeli society are too deep to contain within the institutions they have.
Richard, as we wrap up, how can people get involved with groups like Jews for Justice for Palestinians? And what role do you see these groups playing in resolving the ongoing conflict?
I would say to any Jew who is in any doubt, contact one of the Jewish organizations, Jews for Justice for Palestinians, Jewish Voice for Labor, Na'amod, Young Progressive Jews, Jews Against the Occupation, Jews Against Genocide, Black Jewish Alliance. There are all these groups growing up. We need a strong Jewish voice to speak out and say, Jews do not speak with one name. I said it before and I'll say again, I think the most important antidote to the spread of anti-Semitism is to show that Jews are diverse, that not all Jews think the same, that stereotyping, which is encouraged by the communal institutions of the Jewish community who talk about, we stand behind Israel. Our chief rabbi, he's not mine, the chief rabbi, Mervis, spoke almost immediately after October the 7th about our gallant soldiers in Gaza. If that isn't inviting an accusation of dual loyalty and inviting an anti-Semitic response, I do not know what is. I think the loose talk from leaders of the Jewish community is dangerous to Jews in Britain. I'll put it like that. We have to have a whole range of diverse responses and encourage people to do what they feel comfortable with, but don't feel comfortable doing nothing. There was a very important statement made soon after October the 7th saying, if you ever wondered what it would be like to be living under, what you would do if you were living under slavery, or you were living in conditions of civil war, or you're living when there was a genocide, you're doing it now. We are witnessing on our televisions, in our living rooms, on our phones, we are witnessing a genocide. If you don't want to call it a genocide, we are witnessing a slaughter of unparalleled dimensions. Don't think it doesn't affect you. You must do something. Through your individual actions, you build communal strength and solidarity. And that is our weapon, solidarity. And we stand, as I said before, always with the oppressed, never with the oppressors. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Richard, for your time and words. I echo Richard's sentiments and urge those in the Jewish community who harbour doubts or concerns about Israel's role in this conflict to reach out to groups like Jews for Justice for Palestinians. It's crucial now more than ever to open a dialogue and explore these important issues together. I've been Jack Clarke for Arts Express with host Prairie Miller.
And that's all we have time for today on Arts Express, expression in the arts. And if you'd like to express yourself too, you can write to us at theradiogoddess@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Prairie Miller leaving the station.